It's not about how old you are, it's about quality of life. By 2050, around one quarter of all Australians will be aged 65 years and over. In fact, the number of people aged 65 years and over will overtake the number of children aged 0 to 14 years by around 2025. One day, my mum was old. At the time, she was 80, and all of a sudden, she couldn't do it anymore. And literally overnight, she went from someone who's independent to someone that just could not do it anymore. The government, Medicare, the medical system wants you to be healthy, wants you to stay in your own home. And there's assistance available to help you achieve those things.
Where do I start? Today, we're speaking about something that will happen to all of us. And it doesn't happen gradually, it happens overnight.
It's not about how old you are, it's about quality of life. By 2050, around one quarter of all Australians will be aged 65 years and over, with the proportion of younger Australians declining. Australia has the third longest life expectancy in the world, behind Monaco and Japan. And by 2066, it's expected that older Australians, 65 years and above, will be more than one-fifth of the total population. With declining birth rates, there is concern Australia could be ill-equipped to deal with an older population.
After digesting these stats, it's transformed the way I think about longevity. Welcome to another episode of MedSeners TV. Our guest today is Dr. Van Nguyen, with over 30 years of experience as a doctor and a passion for aged care. He's also had some personal experience. With this, welcome, Dr. Van, and thank you for being with us today. Tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Dion. Let me tell you a bit about myself. I graduated from the University of Queensland in 1993. I did most of my postgraduate training in Brisbane, and I've been a general practitioner for more than 20 years. A doctor for more than 30 years. In that time, I've had experience in accident emergency, orthopedics, general medicine, geriatrics, cardiology, skin cancer. I became involved in aged care due to something that happened to me personally. Right? One day, my mum was old. At the time, she was 80, and she was 60, then 70, then 80, and she was going great. And all of a sudden, she couldn't do it anymore. And literally overnight, she went from someone who's independent, looking after her own house, cooking her own meals, taking care of her garden, doing her own shopping, to someone that just could not do it anymore. It started off as an emotional thing. She just couldn't do it. And eventually she physically couldn't do it. So over a few weeks, we had to organise extra support. And eventually that wasn't enough, and she ended up having to go to a nursing home herself. With the benefit of hindsight, the signs were there, but it's very hard when it's your family member who you think is independent and strong, seeing them deteriorate, and quite possibly you don't want to see it, but it's going to happen. So what I've learned from that experience is we've got to plan for these things.
What are the greatest challenges associated with the aging population? Because we hear all the stats, right? And quite frankly, those stats are really, really alarming. For me, being a son, being a child of obviously my parents, who are now entering into their 80s, and for people that are watching this, that are in the same situation.
Firstly, Dion, I'd like to correct you a little bit here. Aging doesn't start at 80. It starts at about 60 to 65. The definition of age, being old age, starts at 65. And I've seen people deteriorate from 65 to 75 to 85. And it's a completely different person at each of those points in life. And there's a different range of people's health. Some people are great at 80, but there's a huge difference between 80 and 90. And we're getting used to seeing our family members fit, strong, healthy, active for the last 20 years, from 6 to 80. And then all of a sudden they're 90, and they can't do it anymore. So one of the challenges as people age is they have more chronic diseases. They have less financial support, less social support. Mental illness, depression is a major, major problem. Social isolation. They're more likely to have more significant results from any illnesses. So a 50-year-old getting a chest infection will just recover very quickly, whereas a 70-year-old doesn't recover as well, and it gets harder and harder. And one of the challenges is people often avoid seeing a doctor. I've seen patients that haven't seen a doctor for 20 years. Now they're 80 something. And because they've been well. But the time to actually do something is when you're well, not when you're sick. The time to think about the future is before you get there. While you are aging, not when you are old.
So what if I don't have any family? What if I'm destitute? What if, I've got no one? What are the challenges? Where do I look for help? Where do I start? I think that's the question that all of us want to know. And I know, for myself, it was daunting. Where do I start?
Dion, social isolation and depression is very, very common as you get older. People often lose their touch with their family members. Often a spouse passes away and you're on your own. And it can be very, very difficult to reach out for help and know where to start. The first place to start is go and see a doctor, right? Make sure your physical health's okay. Make sure your mental health is okay. Now, in the modern age, the doctor doesn't do all this by himself. There's a team of people at a medical centre to help you, right? If you have the problems with depression or anxiety, we have a psychologist that can help with that. If it's dietary, we can get you into contact with a dietitian via a care plan.
I'm this person. I don't have hope. I don't know where to start. Now you want me to call my doctor, or you want me to book an appointment, right? Most of the time, these appointments are either you book online, they steer you to a website, etc. And I can't do that. I can't see. I've got chronic disease, whatever it is, right? So I call up. Hi, I'd like to see a doctor, right? So when I get this appointment to go see the doctor, what do I tell him? I'm going through depression, or I don't have any financial help. What do you say to your doctor?
Just start by telling us about yourself. It's all about getting to know each other, right? You're my patient, I'm your doctor. The first step is getting to know each other so we can understand each other, so we can understand what you need, what your needs are, what your goals are, and then we can work towards a plan. And yes, you're right. In the modern age, a lot of people can't use smartphones, can't use the internet. We just take it for granted that everybody can because a 3-year-old can, but it doesn't work at the other end of the spectrum. A lot of people find technology very difficult and very challenging. That's why we still have receptionists here.
And that's it with my parents as well, First, you got to put on the big glasses. You're squinting to see the actual, it takes so long, So you call up, and it's embarrassing as well, When someone of age, it's embarrassing to see someone that is so much a junior as a doctor, etc. It can be embarrassing. Hey, look, I'm having these problems, And I think it's okay to talk about it. Going and seeing your doctor and having that engagement where first you form that relationship. But I think it's also important that you cut to the chase and go, look, I'm having these problems. I don't know where to start. Is there any help out there for me? And I guess as a GP, it's acknowledging that and saying, yes, there's help out there. And what is that help?
Dion, I think it's very important to understand that a GP, as opposed to a specialist, takes care of the whole patient from head to toe, including their mental health, their social health, and their community health as well. And we see a lot of stuff. We have a lot of experience. We see a lot of complicated, complex problems. And it can be very daunting to a start. And by the time you're 80, pretty much everyone's going to be junior to you. I'm 55, if that helps. I'm not young myself. I'm approaching old age. In 10 years, I'll be in that category of being old.
So what do you say to your patients? What help is there?
Well, the help you need depends on what your problem is. We have to understand that first. The government, Medicare, the medical system wants you to be healthy, wants you to stay in your own home. And there's assistance available to help you achieve those things.
So, yeah, what kind of help and assistance is there?
I'll give you an example, Dion. I had a patient, 85 years old, independent, and the first time I met him, he'd just fallen over, went to hospital, and he'd broken his hip. When I saw him, he was in pain, couldn't move. He'd lived by himself. His wife had died 10 years ago, still in his own home. And all of a sudden, we had to manage him living at home. So, you know, during the course of the consultation, I got to understand what he wanted to do. He wanted to stay in his house. That was the number one thing, because that was his home. So we organised My Aged Care. We organised a care plan so we can get some physio to him, so he can have some rehabilitation at his home. We sorted out his pain. It was a team effort. He came in, had a problem, and just asked for help. That's where it starts.
Wow. 85 years old, 80 years? And he broke his hip.
Very typical.
Wow.
Because people forget as they get older, they're more at risk of getting osteoporosis.
What's My Aged Care?
My Aged Care is a government program that you can access from the age of 65 that gives you funding for services that will help you stay in your own home. In this particular patient's situation, he'd been doing his own lawns, cleaning his own house for the last 20 years. He didn't have to do that. If he had known about that, modifications could have been made to his home so they didn't have to have a fall and didn't break his hip.
So, what are the different scenarios, right? So, one, just feeling lonely, feeling depressed, no zest or purpose, feeling purposeless, financial difficulties, destitute. There's all these scenarios, right? So, my aged care. So, is that actual financial help, or what do they actually do? What is the process? How long does it take from the time you actually see your GP to actually accessing those services?
Look, the difficulty with most government services is there's limited funding and it takes time, which is why you should come in early. You should come in when you're 65, before you have any problems. The paperwork takes about half an hour, but the process of approval can take up to 6 months. There's a range of funding levels, ranging from about $66,000 a year up to $50,000 a year.
Really?
Yeah, but this is not money. It's services, improvements or adjustments to your home. So for argument's sake, you can get someone to mow your lawn.
Improvements, are we talking like aesthetic improvements, or get myself a new barbecue? Or what kind of improvements are we talking about?
It's broad, so things that will help you stay at your own home. So I've seen people get approval for air conditioning. I've seen people get approval for new flooring so they won't trip. Typically, the patients will have modifications for their baths and showers.
Just say I'm into my 70s. I don't have any superannuation. Okay? Maybe I've made some poor decisions. Maybe life just happened. I'm not in a financial situation to support myself. Okay? I can't even get to the doctor because I can't afford a taxi. In situations like that, what kind of help is there?
Firstly, we offer telehealth appointments. So you don't necessarily need to come and see us face to face. Ideally, we need to see you probably at least once a year. But in terms of working out what you need, in terms of what support's available, you don't need to catch a taxi and come and see us. And in terms of what's available, there's My Aged Care, there's chronic disease management plans, there's mental health plans. My Aged Care is a government program designed to help you keep in your own home. It provides assistance in terms of services, modifications to your home that will help you keep your own home up to $50,000 a year. To give you an example, the patient I had with the broken hip was amazed that he could have had someone mow his lawn for the last 20 years. He could have gotten a cleaner. He didn't have to clean his own house. Because these things become more difficult for you to do as you get older. And when we sent someone out to assess his house, there was so much stuff. It just was gotten to the point beyond that he could manage by himself. So the very first thing we did was to get it all cleaned out, make it manageable.
Tell you what, there was a scenario. Someone from some government institution came home to see my dad to make an assessment, right? But I tell you what, somewhere in that process of the interview, they put the fear of God in him because he felt that what they were doing was they were actually making an assessment to put him in an aged care facility, which he didn't want. You know, he thought they come in and put him in an aged care facility and take him away from his home. So these are some of the real practical scenarios that people watching this would feel or going through. So what we need to know is one, is there help available out there for people that don't have any financial help, that need the most basic of services? One, they need food on the table. They're not mobile, so they can't move around. They need to get to their doctor, you know. Just being able to go to the shop, being able to move around, being able to provide the most essential services. So these are the most practical things that people that are aging require. And what they need to know is how do they get to these facilities or these services?
In actual fact, I have several patients who need all of those services. Okay, so Meals on Wheels is available to provide food. My aged care also provides transportation to and from doctors. All right. They also take you shopping if required. So it's really a matter of understanding what the patient's needs are. Now, in relation to what you're referring to is an ACAT assessment, where someone goes out and assesses the patient's needs. Now, that's an assessment. That's not set in stone, right? And it's also a bit of future planning. That doesn't mean you have to go to a nursing home today. My aged care is actually designed to keep you in your own home for as long as possible. Like any government funding, any government service, it's all first come, best dressed, and it's a finite resource. In 10 or 20 years' time, it's going to be a major problem because the number of old people is going to increase well beyond the capacity of the services to keep up. So the time to take action is now. You don't have to be elderly, immobile, with a broken hip to start accessing these services. You can access these services from the age 65 for my aged care. With mental health, you can access that at any age. With chronic disease management, once you've had something for 6 months, you can access the chronic disease management plan. The way to start is go and see your doctor. We're here to help you. You know, it is a tricky maze to try and navigate yourself through this.
Well, thank you, Dr. Van, for sharing with us today. It certainly is daunting. I can tell you for myself and my experience, it's really, really daunting. And thank you for sharing for us. And thank you, folks, for tuning in to another episode of MedCenters TV.